that, again, I'm really full of quotes tonight. I promise. I'm usually not, but I think it's Dr. Cornel West who says, justice is what love looks like in public. And being able to divest ourselves from the idea of love as just something that is easy and passive, and not something that we have a responsibility to each other for, is really a difficult place to be. But it's also something that's really vital and important to our survival, and being able to recognize the way that we are tied in together, that it's not just something that hurts other people, it's something that hurts everybody. Being able to recognize those those interconnections. And so we've had a couple of minutes. I don't know if there is anybody that would be interested in volunteering, just if they have thought about love and racism and their experiences within their relationships. Feel free to go ahead and volunteer, unmute yourself and share.
Sorry, we do have a couple new folks in that joined as well.
And then Jen, I saw you raise your hand.
And then Jen would like to
Rebecca, who just joined, if you'd like to just do a quick introduction of yourself, just to say hi if you want.
And then Serene as well.
Hi, I'm Becky Richardson, and I live in Brookings. What else should I say? Just that?
That's plenty. That's good.
All right. Sorry I'm late. Thanks.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Serene. I am part of the board for South Dakotans Healing Racism. I'm very tired. I'm very sore today, but I came home and I made a really awesome burrito. I put on my favorite, it's a Minion t-shirt. I put that on and I put my hair up, and I'm just happy to be here with everybody right now. So nice to meet y'all.
Thanks, Serene.
Jen, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Some of the first thoughts that came to mind is primarily white culture is based on the nuclear family, and that is all that is focused upon. So there isn't this interconnectedness. When I started learning about Lakota spirituality, to better help the guys inside the walls and understand their spiritual traditions, learning about the Teoshpea, learning about the Hunka ceremony, to adopt a relative, to making of a relative, the responsibility and accountability to absolutely everyone, no matter what your race is, no matter what your background is, even being related to blades of grass and the clouds in the sky, just that being a part of something bigger than who we are. That's what love is. And we're not taught that as children, as white people. It's always just nuclear based, and it's only just our tight little family, not outside of the fold. So those are my first thoughts.
Thank you, Jen. Anyone else have thoughts that they feel like sharing?
Can you just repeat the question or prompt again?
So just talking a little bit about love and what love is, the difference between it being something passive that we can just, fall into, that kind of James Baldwin, there was a quote talking about the infantile kind of something that makes us happy kind of love, and the difference with love as a muscle, as something that we have to practice, that we have to work at, that it's not just something that happens. And with thinking about love in those ways, also if there's been experience where we have thought about it in relation to our race. So one of the things, Jen, as you're talking, that kind of divine community, beloved community, divine interconnection, and the way that within white culture, very much that the idea of family is very nuclear. It's this prescribed, this is who you're allowed to love, right? We've seen that a lot with, even with the LGBT Q2A kind of community, those experiences that, you're only allowed to love, within this kind of prescribed way. I also feel like there is this devaluation of feelings in general, right? That feelings are just something when you're emotional and it's not good. It's something that's negative. There's something wrong with you if you have feelings. And that, feelings are something that, connect us not only to ourselves, where we're able to have our feelings within our body and within our spirit, within our soul, depending on your beliefs. But that feelings are information, for both within ourselves and within our relationships with others. So go ahead.
Oh, I agree completely. There is this idea to have a stiff upper lip, to not to expose yourself, not to allow yourself to be vulnerable. I see that. And it, sorry. But to be the love is being vulnerable. Love is building trust. Love is it's so much to it, and you need to be able to experience your feelings and name your feelings and go with your feelings and roll with your feelings. And I don't think that that is something that is necessarily approved of in a lot of white culture.
Yes.
And oh,
Go ahead.
so I agree with the feelings, and Julia mentioned something that makes me think of that that somehow, like, that's my experience. I feel like we are all afraid of people who are different than us, different feelings, different cultures, different background, different stories. And a lot of times when we are, let's talk about, like, there's so many different religions, there are different cultures, different beliefs. And in a way, it's funny that all those things, they make us feel like we belong to a group. But at the same time, they kind of segregate us, from, actually getting to know the group outside of this group. You know what I mean? So I just feel like that's why I feel, like there should be a deeper love for all kinds of people if we embrace the diversity and we know people are allowed to be different, and we should appreciate that. I feel that's not talked a lot. Yeah, like where I'm in Sioux Falls, so, like, I just feel that's something lacking in the education, especially among the young people, young folks here. If you look different, or you talk differently, like I have an accent, so, but I learned to love it. like I hated it at first, and I feel like it's something I should get rid of, but that became a part of me. And I just had to learn to love it. so it's a process. I'm sure a lot of you understand that as well. So yeah, it's just something I want to share. I feel there's a more universal kind of love.
Yeah, I want to piggyback off of what Eugene said, that when the communities have silos of just kind of like, it's a tight-knit community, and it's almost very helicopter parenting, overprotective of who can come into this community. Like, are they Baptist? Are they, Jewish? Are they, you have to belong to that because don't want it disrupting the flow of the tight-knit community. Growing up, it's interesting because, like, my dad is all of his sons, for the most part, like all of his children were in interracial, families, marriages, children. And I wish he wasn't in his class right now so I could kind of get his perspective on this, because we haven't really had that discussion. But I remember as a kid that the first time I like had a girlfriend outside of my race, I was a Puerto Rican girl, and we were walking after, our after school extracurricular activity, holding hands. She didn't tell her mom, who was very overprotective, and the Puerto Rican community is very tight knit. And I didn't tell my mom, but I tested my mom the week before. This is kind of dating myself, but J-Lo and Puff Daddy was a thing at the time. So Puff Daddy, the black rapper, J-Lo, the Puerto Rican singer. I was like, Mom, what do you think about them? And she said he had to get the closest thing to a white girl. so I was nervous at the time. I was just like, oh, where is this gonna go? And so we walking hands into the parking lot as her mom pulls up at the same time my mom pulls up to pick us up after school. And we just was holding hands, and her mom get out, my mom get out. They look at each other with the biggest smile. They look at us and come and like give us a hug. And so we all laugh and introduce each other, and then we drive home. And then I tell my mom, I said, I thought you was racist. She said, boy, what makes you say that? I said, because of the J-Lo Puffy comment you said. Like, she was like, oh, don't be listening to me. I just be saying, so then, that was a sigh of relief that like this tight-knit community that I come from can be embracing and accepting. And for her, the same for her. And then it just kind of became a thing where the silos would kind of get knocked over, and like more exposure, to get rid of that lack of exposure, to just kind of get to know people. And you can embrace and welcome people into your community and not feel like it's going to change it, or maybe your community needs to be changed. Maybe you need a little flavor in there, So I think that just the more we get the exposure with each other, the more we can kind of embrace humanity as one. I know that's a big kumbaya thing to say, but that's so what? I'm a futurist. This is what I want.
It's a beautiful place to be to is to be able to see into what can come by the things that we do today. And I know my experience, I grew up in Southern California, and so it was very diverse. And I think what I took away to Yuchin was the foundational of self-love. That's something that's so important. I think within white culture, there's this huge disconnect of like not being allowed to like truly love yourself, right? There's a lot of ego, a lot of this idea of entitlement because of this whiteness, but like it's detached from anything of substance. And that makes it so that fear, that being afraid of other people is so big that it gets in the way of that shared love of humanity. I mean, being able to think about the last time when you just felt those warm and fuzzies about humans. Humans are just beautiful creatures. Like the kindness and the potential that are within us, it's something that's there as much as the really awful, hard, bad kind of things where, because of that, being able to see the beautiful things is something that's really, really a powerful thing, to be able to have that connection that we're able to have. I know one of the things too that I was thinking of is the last year we had our conversation, the birds, bees, and boundaries, and talking about power dynamics, and being able to recognize when we're in relationship with people, irregardless, if it's an interracial relationship or not, but especially, within that, with this conversation, is that we have to be mindful of our power dynamics, and power dynamics, it's not just about race and racism. Power dynamics can be, we're in a patriarchal system, and, the sexism, power dynamics can be, class, they can be, all kinds of different, systems that we all navigate within, our societies, and being able to examine the power dynamics within a relationship, and being able to listen and believe the people that we're in relationship with, I think that's one of the things that's most difficult for white folks, is to take a step back and like not be defensive, not center ourselves, and being able to listen and believe when someone says, hey, this is something that hurts me because of that. um, I think too, of the Audre Lorde quote, it's not our differences that divide us, it's our inability to celebrate or to recognize and celebrate those differences. Um, that it's a beautiful, and it's a human thing to be so different. And we can't just pretend it away, and say we're colorblind and make it be something where, those things don't exist. Just doing a quick time check. We've got about 15 minutes left. We usually, have no problem going over, but mindful for some folks that, they've got the limited time. So any thoughts or questions, comments that have come up?
I had a thought about your comment on the being in the patriarchal society and dealing with racism as well. So as a white woman married to a black man, that dynamic, I see that dynamic in our relationship. So sometimes things that I do get interpreted by him through a racial lens of my superiority, or acting in a superior manner. And sometimes the things he does get interpreted by me as being part of that patriarchal, a man's trying to tell me what to do kind of thing. So we're trying to tread both of those issues, and be respectful of each other. And sometimes it's hard.
I appreciate, you sharing that, because I think that's a very real thing to be aware of. And then also, to hold the, that reality and the truth too of, misogyny, or the specific experience that, Black women face within misogyny, the intersection of those systems of oppression. And I don't know if there's anyone that has, thoughts or comments to that too, from Marlene.
I think in terms of that, it can be like additional things that need to be unpacked, but I think that's all kind of a part of, oh, sorry, what?
Oh, you were looking at me.
Oh, I thought you were like, somebody saying something. Just having to like unpack all the different layers of, but also just communicating in very different ways, and just kind of a matter of spending years working that out, and like working out.
For sure.
I guess we end up like having to explain like our thought processes to each other a lot, just because of like what you have, having those different lenses that you view things through, and like say like, this is how I saw what just happened, like, and kind of walking through things. Do you have anything to add?
Just, different communication styles, that definitely took years for us to kind of still work at it. And if you got the patient, that is a lifesaver.
That is really useful to go to be like, this is how I saw what just happened. And like also sometimes going into like the history of like, this is what's happened to me in the past in these situations, and that's why I reacted the way I did when you said this. Yeah. And like filling out the context essentially of your life.
Kind of give a little backdrop of like, so then it makes sense. So, okay, when that happens, okay, still processing and dealing with.
Because there are those layers of like for, I don't know, arguing about something. He's like, yeah, you're totally centering yourself right now. like think about this from a different angle for a minute. But those are my messy thoughts on that. I have a ball of messy thoughts on other things. I'm sorry if this doesn't make sense. I'm not as good as other people at like linking my thoughts together on the fly. So I was just thinking about that part of the discussion about feelings being kind of like invalidated and devalued. And I think that's something to be really aware of in like personal romantic relationships, in like relationships at work, that like the different, the feelings being devalued and having people's experiences being devalued because it's not like, I don't know, presented in like this very stoic way. I was just chatting with a really good friend earlier today, and she was like, I need your feedback on something that happened. And and what you see is happening. And it was basically like a coworker just being like very passive aggressive, very like like I want to say Karen-esque, but like that very like passive aggressive middle class, like Midwest white lady, like, like where you say something that could be interpreted as like nothing, but like, that they're actually saying something mean and like something backhanded. And so it's like one of those things of it can be easily dismissed if you're not the person it's directed at. And there was also a racial dynamic at play there of like it was all these white women saying things to a Native American woman, and she was like, is this me interpreting this wrong, or is that happening? I was like, no, that was like which she didn't give me the context if that was like white ladies. I was like, are those a bunch of white ladies? Because that sounds like an office environment I've been in before. Like but anyway, I had a different thought I was leading into with that. And I'm so sorry. This is me on display of I can't link my thoughts together while talking in front of people. Did that make any kind of sense?
It made a lot of sense. It
Okay.
really did. And I think, it is something like it demonstrates so two thoughts that I pull out of that is the, the first of being in a relationship with someone, like if you are not fundamentally able to talk about your differences, like you are not going to be able to deal with those differences. And you see this with white folks a lot when there's, disagreements, and, they're told, hey, you're being racist right now. And the response is, no, I'm not. I have a Black friend. Or no, I'm not. I have, this kind of marginalized person that, is my friend. And so it excuses me. But that question of like, if you are truly in relationship with someone, if you are in a relationship, that's not going to be something that you're going to use as a defense for being called out or in, or having something that you do like acknowledged. It's going to be something where there's that responsibility of being in a relationship and doing your own work where it's something that you have to have that conversation about, and then being able to have the back of your friends, or the people that you're in relationship as a white person. If you have a friend of color, or and they come to you, being able to be the person that they're able to have that conversation with, and they know that you will be able to be there and speak up and be able to have that conversation. That's a thing that it can be really uncomfortable because within white culture, within whiteness, the one of the things that I was thinking about too is that there's things I've been reading recently talking about how we're not direct. We do not talk about things directly. It's very much that passive aggressive, Midwest nice kind of indirectness where we're not going to address an issue. Um, and then that's also that emotionality of people who do bring it up, are accused of, being angry or being divisive. And remembering that whenever we're, in a situation, or listening to things, taking that step back and truly listening and believing the people telling us, their experiences, especially within that lens of power dynamics, where I'm never going to live and know the experiences, of a Black woman, but I can listen and I can amplify and I can support them the best I can with my privilege. I heard someone's microphone go off. I don't know if that means someone wants to share.
So this is Alex. I was just, this is a pretty heavy topic to talk about. And as a Indigenous woman, a Lakota woman, and thinking about what love means to me, not just interracial, but what it means to love myself. It's been a long journey for me, over 30 years, to realize this because of where we grew up and how, things that happened. I went to a white school, and, who you are just as a person was devalued because it came from that, where violence is love, which led me down, and others like me, down paths of abusive relationships. So that being in that school system and not having that, it connected, and it's taken me a long time to overcome that. And I get easily triggered. when I do see the violence, when I feel it. My husband and I, the other day, he was going through his Facebook, and he's like, "Oh, who's this person?" And I was like, "Oh, they're from around where I'm from." And he goes to click the link on his profile, and the first thing that comes up is them in church, and he's singing a song about his kid, or loving his kid so much. His dad loved him so much that he beat him. Like, he had the thing that saved him was a Bible from England and a belt, and they're both bound in leather. And that's like, it just blew my mind, because as a Lakota person, love is everything for us. The love of the earth, the land, everything. Love is our sacrifice. It's everything that we've had. And, that violence plays into how we are colonized, because they really did. They killed us with our love. They knew we valued and respected our lives, human life, so much that we wouldn't kill you, and that was used against us. They knew. They walked in and they were like, they won't kill you, because we had that respect for life. And then I was thinking about my daughter, and she was just talking about, the love of her people so much that she would stay home from school, and she wouldn't have a fit, and she would accept all these circumstances that come within quarantine and this pandemic, because the ultimate love is the ultimate sacrifice so the people may live. And so just some thoughts, like Jen said, with our ceremonies, it's all based around that. Our hunka, when we bring someone else, not from our immediate family, but someone else into our family, and we love them. In my hunka ceremony, I'd call him my uncle. He gave me lessons that, later on, even after he was gone, I still feel. He gave me my Lakota name, and it's just, the never-ending circle of everything. So I just kind of wanted to talk about that from an Indigenous standpoint.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you for sharing and allowing us to just, I think, the talking about love in that I just finished reading Water Lily, and the kinship relationship was such a fundamentally important part. And Water Lily is a book that talked about the Lakota people before, right around the time of colonizing. And remember, here in South Dakota, that we are still under that military occupation. We've got the name forts all over, and we see it with the disparities in demographics within our prison systems, within the COVID impact, and how that is something that love and that kinship was weaponized and used to cause harm. And I think that's something that's really important, and really that part of love is to bear witness to that, and not to ignore it or deny it or dismiss it. Especially for white folks that are here, that's that responsibility to see what the violence of colonizing has had. And also, I think it's a testament to that resiliency, that kinship and that love, and that it's so strong that it still is something that survived all of these things, and that there's still that kind of work that's being done. I think we saw that with our last call too, just how it is something where there's that interconnection, and whiteness has this idea that we're this individual island. And I think with COVID, we've really seen the way that we are deeply interconnected. It's not something that happens to the other. It's something that happens to all of us. So we've got just about 2 minutes until it's 8 o'clock. Again, mindful for time for folks. Feel free to jump off if you need to. If you have thoughts or questions, comments, we can continue. We'll go over. We have no issue with having the meeting after a meeting conversations.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to jump in here. Can you guys see me? I at least wanted, okay, there I am. What was just said as far as our Native people. You know, there was a time, I'm not sure, we're working on some, right here in Sioux City, we're working on trying to get more awareness out there as far as what happened and I think that's really important so we can understand why we are at where we are at today. And so I just love these conversations. I love it when you know we start using these new words. They seem like new words like vulnerability and inclusion and information. So if I'm able to tell somebody and get, and particularly an organization that serves people of color, Native American people, if I'm able to at least get my foot in the door, which I have found is quite difficult, in fact, I have a lot of opinions on that, but let me just break to the point. We've been working on that in Sioux City, but a lot of our people don't know, and even our indigenous people don't know things such as why our ability to love our families and love each other was stripped away from us quite intentionally through policy. And some of you might already know, but through assimilation, through federal policy to kill the Indian and save the man. And none of that is really known outside of these type of communities and these type of discussions. Native people, people of color, every single day are forced to walk on the eggshells of the eagle of white culture, shall I say. And no offense to any sort of Washichus, white people out there, but every day we don't even know what it's like, as far as I understand, to have conversations, to speak truth, and to when somebody opens the door. I've just gotten so many doors shut in my face, but we're still working here in Sioux City. The board, and I'll just say something such as the boarding school era and the Indian Religious Freedom Act. It's just in my generation that I've been able actually to love myself for who I am as a Native person, because our religion, our way of life, our language was lawfully or unlawfully, shall I say, but through policy, stripped away from us. And it's only in my generation that I've been able to even have this conversation without the threat of going to jail. And so I'm very well used to walking on eggshells. Wherever I go, the outcome of my health is directly related to that. In my interaction with when I go to the ER, the quality of health that I'm going to receive, up to the point of even the quality of service I'm going to get from a come and go or a gas station. It all resides on being hostage to the mood of white people. And no offense again, it's just like I said, just walking on eggshells. Has that police officer had his morning coffee? Is he going through a divorce? Has that doctor or nurse been working a 12-hour shift and hasn't had her snack? Or that cashier who is overworked and undertired and stressed out because of the children at home. We are hostage to the moods of others, and it's difficult for me to negotiate through that, because we are taught to accept the values of other people. When that's not being returned, it's not that I'm hyper sensitive. It's just that I've been living this way all my life. And so it's only, self-determination since 1975. We've been living like this for a long time, and we are learning how to love ourselves again, because our parenting, our children were separated through child welfare, through boarding school, and then as a result through other crisis situations, that the ability to love was literally taken away from the indigenous people. And so that's as evidenced by the high rate of, well, you know, the list that I'm going to go, that I would say: alcoholism, homelessness, domestic violence, suicide, everything. You know, the statistics are always there that we lead, despite the fact that we only make up a small percentage of the population. I get so tired. It is so heartbreaking and so stressful to walk on eggshells, but want to make friends, want to break down barriers, want to be a steward and a good relative and have an open mind. It is oftentimes very confusing and just, quite frankly, wears me out. But of course, you know, we're still here, and that's why I just love the fact we have such diversity, you know, of people here right now. The work must continue. There's just so much that needs to be done. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michael. I really appreciate you sharing, and just how that our relationships, our interpersonal relationships, you know, it's that macro, you know, within ourselves, but then, you know, with others, and then, you know, within our society, that it is this abusive relationship that whiteness and that colonizing violence has put everybody in. And um, being able to make space for that, and to recognize that when especially, you know, white people, for when someone says like, hey, you did something and that was racist, that it's not something that is an attack. It's not something that is meant like to be malicious. It's something that's being given as a place where we can make changes. And there's a lot of times where it's just not safe for that to happen. And so being able to work through just our discomfort is not the same as living in threat, and being able to just listen to the experiences of other people is such an important part of that loving work.
Chen, do you want to say something?
No. Okay. Put me on the spotlight right now. Well,
No,
I
thought I saw you indicate.
well, while Michael was talking, well, those are all wonderful. Thank you guys for sharing, because it's very heavy. And actually a big reason I started my music nonprofit is because I want to use music and art to reach out to more people. And so I try to program things that are kind of more culturally diverse in my music and programming. And I'm just gonna put this out there to this group, and because you guys are all amazing. Like if any of you are interested, because I actually a few days ago I just emailed the Cheyenne River Youth Project. Actually, I don't know them. Maybe some of you know, like, because I wanted to start, because I have worked with some people and artists in the reservation areas in the past, and it always makes my heart, you know, it just breaks my heart to you know, see what they have to go through, and you know what they have gone through. And so like if anybody think, like, I have done several projects in the past, I have a lot of video footage, and then I because of pandemic, so like I started getting, you know, artists online, the performers from those shows, to have discussions with, you know, with people directly online. So like if you guys have any groups or organizations, like you guys you know, want me to bring music to, you know, to, and have, you know, different discussions, I'm happy to reach out to you and have the discussion. Because for me, you know, education is really, and also exposure, like we have to expose people to different things, different ways of thinking, different just different cultures. And different stories, and that's what I've been trying to do, and just by reaching out and knowing all different people, or different artists, for me is so amazing because it changes how I think. And I feel like a lot of time the hardest thing is to reconstruct how you think, because if we are all creatures of habit, so we actually think it's I don't want to say it's like if we can change how we think, we might have a different kind of future. I just strongly believe that we have a certain power to control our future, regardless of what's presented in front of us, and the way we think is a very powerful thing. And but also, like, I just feel like there's a lack of diversity just in general all around here, and that's actually, it's really hard, because especially the young, the youth need to have more chances to maybe hear even this conversation, if they they have the exposure to this, to start thinking when they are younger, or to know different type of stories. I think that would be very beneficial to them. So anyway, sorry if I don't know where I'm going with this, but I just feel like, it's hard to get out the old ways, like, even from my culture, because I'm from Taiwan, and lots of people are kind of stuck in their group mindset, and like how we should behave, how we should think. But then, I got over here to the States, and I started thinking differently. So I started looking at things very differently. Even like, I feel my parents are different now than like 20 years ago when I was in Taiwan. It's just amazing how they're like completely different people to me. And I have different opinions of them, and because I became different too. So yeah.
I would like to say something. The one thing that I think white people are really bad at is we're bad at listening, to just hear and absorb the information. We're always listening to have a response because we always need to be in control and we always have to be right. And so when we hear tragedies or really bad things, then the first instinct, I think, is, well, what can I do to fix it? And if I can't fix it, then it's your problem, not my problem. When really all it is we're just supposed to sit back and hear and digest it. There's nothing that we're supposed to do with it except for be present in the story that is being told to us.
So here's a question. You mentioned that white people respond the way they respond. I guess my thought to that is, are white people responding the way they're responding because they're used to being in charge of the people that they're supposed to be listening to? So if I have to listen to someone that I've always been in charge of, it's not about me not wanting to hear it. It's about me saying, why are you even talking to me about this discussion when I should be leading you in this discussion? And so we haven't even gotten into the intimidation factor, the cause and effects of why different cultures, different races doesn't respond or listen to each other. If I've been in charge, there's none for me to hear until I could break down the wall of saying, I want to be your equal. And until that ideal of the superiority out of the thought, and also the privilege, per se, the white privilege out of the thought, it's going to be hard to heal. And I'm not saying everyone has it, because some people don't even know that they have that privilege. And so part privilege start becoming a discussion, becoming real, and people start to break down my privilege, it's going to be difficult for people to listen to other races.
Yeah.
I had something to say, just kind of listening to all this, and I wasn't going to speak at all. But you started talking about self-love and vulnerability and exposure. And so I read a quote today, actually, as well, about how wanting to save everybody and fix things is a trauma response. I lost my significant other to suicide in 2015, and my little brother was diagnosed with schizophrenia last year. And my response ever since then has been, I have to do something. I have to fix what's broken and how do we do it. We just have to have those conversations. And I grew up in a diverse neighborhood in Sioux Falls, and then went to high school in Canton, where there is no diversity and there is no exposure at all. And through my experiences as a youth with my own mental health and everything after that, in 2019, inspired by an article I read that New York City had implemented mental health curriculum, mindfulness into every school, K through 12. And I thought, I have to do this. You know, I have to reach out to the board and see what happens. And they accepted it 3 months later, because ironically, the health class was up for review, which only happens every 5 to 7 years. And I went into it a little naive, thinking they were going to adopt everything New York City did because it was a great curriculum. And, you know, it wasn't that way. We have our last committee in March, and then in fall of 2021, this year, K through 12 will have mental health, extra mental health. There were already teachers working on mindfulness and stuff like that, but my hope is to do it in Rapid City and on the reservations. And I went that route because I know it's not going to fix everything. I totally believe in environmental, in affordable housing, ending hunger, wiping student debt, equity, bringing the level to a playing field. And until we get to the core and we rip it out and we revamp the whole thing, nothing's going to change. And I feel for some reason, for the first time in my life today, that we are experiencing a major shift. And I'm usually hopeful, but I'm extremely hopeful. And it's just going to high school in Canton, there was a lot of racism and there was a lot of no self-love. I mean, this is country town. They don't talk about their feelings. You don't talk about your feelings. You go to your sports, you do the best you can, you do what you can to win those sports, and you act tough. And so I think a lot of it has to do with exposure. And like you said, bringing this to schools, bringing this conversation to Canton High School. I hate to call them out on this recording, but that needs to happen. Our kids need to be exposed to these conversations, and I'm not sticking up for them because I think after a certain age, it's either you figure it out or you don't, and it's wrong or it's right. But I just really love this conversation, and I think you guys are hitting all the points, and I can't wait to keep talking about it more. So thank you.
Thank you. So I absolutely love the conversation with our discussions because it's really centered in personal empowerment, that all of us can have these conversations, all of us can do this work. Whiteness really makes it so that we are not empowered. I am going to mess up this quote, but I believe it's Alice Walker who says something about the way, like the empire, the system, whatever, it makes us think that we have no power, but everybody has that power, and that's tied into that self-love. And I think, Mr. Harris and Jen, talking, and I really think what's so important about that dynamic too is that, like, white folks do not want to look at our history. We do not want to face, I didn't own slaves. Like, it wasn't me. We want to opt out of any kind of responsibility. And being in relationship with people means we have to hold all of it. We have to hold. There's last year with the presidential race, we had a Native man named Mark Charles who ran, and he shared a quote from a Indigenous man, a First Nations man in Canada named George Aramis. And it's where common memory is lacking, where people do not share in the same past, there can be no real community. Where community is to be formed, common memory must be created. And that beloved community, being in community with each other, we have to face the legacy of what whiteness has done, and how it is something where I really appreciate, and I don't know, I just Tolkien, I know that's not your, Tiffany. I appreciate Tiffany, talking about too, where white culture is very much where there's that disconnect, where you don't talk about what happens, you know, in your house. You don't talk about the bad things. You don't like have those things be truths that you hold up and you face, and how that's something where there is that personal responsibility that we have to do that work. And we have to know that as white people, like us coming in and fixing it, you know, that white savior, like Jen said, we do have to be present for it. And then we do have to be able to do the work that follows. It's not something where we can hand back and just be like, well, you know, you're the one that's bringing up this problem. So like, what do we need to do to fix it? Like, we have to participate in that and be in that relationship, to be able to be in beloved community, to work through things with love as that muscle, that practice that we're learning.
I think something else that's really interesting, in one of my psychology books last semester, it spoke on punishment between white families and Black families. And the reason Black families are successful in communicating and being close is because after punishment, my dog's gonna bark, they talk to their children. They have emotional conversations. They and white people don't. It's like the punishment's done and go to your room. We're not going to talk about anything that happened. And that, all that, you know, that hatred for yourself just spills out in everybody else, even if you don't mean it. The words, the hate, it comes out until you fix yourself. And so I really found that was interesting. And I think that's so great is, if you don't have an emotional connection with your children or your friends or your family, how are you ever going to really connect and connect and grow? And just going off that.
Yeah. And I think it's important to be able, one of the things I really want to be firm in too is that like we can understand these things, but the same as like when I went through my abusive relationship and I had, you know, to leave, is I can understand, but it doesn't excuse somebody hurting other people, right? We can understand that, you know, white folks have all kinds of things that, you know, are the reasons why, but it does not excuse it. And it's not something that we have to allow to happen. Being able to be in beloved community and loving other people is that we do the, there's a parenting approach called peaceful parenting, and it's focused on, you know, being able to have those conversations with your kids and helping them through their feelings. But one of my favorite things that they do is that I am not going to let you hurt yourself. I'm not going to let you hurt other people. I'm not going to let you, you know, destroy the house because you've got these big feelings. And being able to do that, you know, within our community, you know, white folks, it's our job to tell other white people, I am not going to let you do that. I am not going to let you hurt people just because you've got all this shit that you need to work through. It's our responsibility to go out and do that, because otherwise we're letting, you know, our people, white people, and that's a thing that, you know, a lot of white folks, as soon as we become aware of things, we want to distance ourselves. And those white people, other white people, are the bad white people, and I'm a good white person. And we have to stay in community with white folks and have those relationships. It doesn't mean that, you know, we have to be BFFs, but it does mean that those are our people, and it's our responsibility to do the work with them because of that beloved community. And if we want to be in community with, you know, people of color, that's something that is our work to do too. Okay, I don't know, feel free if anyone's got questions, thoughts. Otherwise, I can close us out with a quote. No last minute thoughts to share? Well, I really just, heart to heart, really appreciate everyone being here and sharing and being able to be present for each other and work through the conversations. I heard a mute come off. Do we have someone that wants to say something?
It was an accident.
I want to hear the things. And I'm just going to close out with a quote from the beginning from James Baldwin. his quote that love takes off the masks that we fear we cannot live without and know we cannot live within. I use the word love here not merely in the personal sense, but as a state of being or a state of grace, not in the infantile American sense of being made happy, but in the tough and universal sense of quest and daring and growth. So I hope that's the love that we go forward with from the call here. That sense of quest, of daring, and of growth together in these conversations. Thank you all for being here tonight.